Have you ever sent a text and then found yourself checking your phone again and again and again? At first, you tell yourself it doesn't matter. You say, "I'm busy anyway. I don't really care." But deep down, something tightens in your chest. Minutes pass, then an hour, then longer. Your mind begins to replay the message you already sent. You start wondering if one word sounded wrong, if your tone was off, if you should have added something or removed something, and then it happens. A dry reply, a single word, or worse, silence. Most people think this moment means rejection. They think it means they weren't interesting enough, not attractive enough, not clever enough. But that's not what's really happening. What you're feeling in that moment has very little to do with the other person. It has everything to do with how you sent the message, and more importantly, why you sent it. Because most people don't text to communicate. They text to relieve anxiety. They text to fill silence. They text to feel reassured. They text because uncertainty makes them uncomfortable. And the Stoics understood something essential about this. When you act to escape discomfort, you give that discomfort control over you. Texting is one of the fastest ways this happens in modern life. You don't even notice it at first. You feel a slight uncertainty. Your fingers move before your mind catches up. A message is sent, not because it needed to be said, but because you needed relief, and that energy, that subtle need, is always felt, not consciously, but emotionally. That's where attraction quietly collapses. Because attraction is not created by effort, it's created by self-command. And this is where Stoicism enters the conversation. Stoicism is not about being cold. It's not about playing games. And it's not about withholding to manipulate. Stoicism is about restraint with clarity. It's about choosing not to act when action comes from insecurity. Most people text from impulse. Stoics text from intention. And that single difference changes everything. Before we talk about what to text, we need to understand why saying less works. Because curiosity, anticipation, and emotional engagement do not come from more words, they come from space. Think about the stories that hold your attention. A great film doesn't explain everything in the first scene. A powerful book doesn't reveal its meaning immediately. A memorable person doesn't tell you everything about themselves right away. They leave room. They allow something to unfold. But most people are terrified of room. They rush to explain. They rush to clarify. They rush to make sure they're understood. And in doing so, they remove the very thing that makes people lean in. Stoic philosophy has a simple rule. What is scarce gains value. What is abundant is overlooked. This applies to words just as much as it applies to possessions. When your messages say everything, there is nothing left to return to. When your messages explain too much, there is nothing left to wonder about, and curiosity dies. Look at how most conversations begin. How was your day? What are you doing? Hope you're having a good day. There is nothing wrong with these messages, but there is nothing alive in them either. They are complete, closed, emotionally flat. They don't create movement. They don't open a loop. They don't invite imagination. Now compare that with something slightly different. I just noticed something interesting about you. Something today reminded me of you, unexpectedly. I had a strange thought about you earlier. Nothing is explained, nothing is pushed, but suddenly there is space, and the mind hates empty space. When a gap appears, the mind wants to fill it. That's not manipulation, that's human psychology. Stoic communication simply understands this and refuses to overfill the moment. But here's the key distinction. You are not holding back to provoke. You are holding back because you don't need to spill yourself out. There is a difference between mystery and desperation disguised as strategy. Real restraint comes from self-sufficiency. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Do not waste what remains of your life speculating about others when you send a message from com." You don't hover over the outcome. You don't watch the phone. You don't monitor reactions. You send, you release, you return to your life. That posture is felt, and it's rare. Most people are emotionally leaning forward, hoping to be pulled back. Stoic communication leans nowhere, it stands. This same principle applies to anticipation. Anticipation is not built by access, it's built by unfolding. People don't miss what they already have full access to. They miss what continues to move without waiting for them. Most people destroy anticipation by giving everything away immediately. I planned something for us. I have something to tell you. I got you a surprise. Nice intentions, flat energy. Stoic communication does something subtler. I came up with something for later this week, but I need to know one thing first. Now the conversation has direction, not because you demanded attention, but because the other person is now part of the movement. Stoicism is never passive. It is intentional without force. There is another mistake most people make without realizing it. They believe faster replies equal higher interest. Often, the opposite is true. Fast replies frequently signal a lack of emotional regulation. The Stoics warned about this centuries ago. What you chase, you place above you. When your emotional state rises and falls, based on responses, you give your center away. And once your center is gone, so is your power. Stoic texting does not mean delayed replies on purpose. It means replying when there is something meaningful to say, not when anxiety demands relief. That alone shifts the dynamic. Now let's talk about compliments. This is where most people lose respect without noticing. Generic compliments aim to low. You're beautiful. You're gorgeous. You're so attractive. Even when they're true, they communicate one thing clearly. I want and desire without grounding. Feels unstable. Stoic compliments don't beg. They recognize. They don't focus on appearance. They focus on character, presence, and perspective. I like how you think things through. You don't rush your words. That's rare. You handle pressure differently than most people. These land differently because they are not transactional. They don't ask for validation in return, Epictetus said. First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. You're not trying to impress. You're expressing clarity. Timing matters just as much as content. Even the right words fail when spoken at the wrong moment. Stoic communication listens first. When someone reveals something real, that is when recognition belongs. Not before, not randomly. This makes the interaction feel earned. And earned moments leave a mark at its core. Texting is not about words. It's about emotional states. Every message either creates curiosity, builds anticipation, or establishes emotional safety. If it does none of these, it fades into noise. Stoicism teaches emotional economy. Say what matters, remove what doesn't. Less volume, more weight. And here is the quiet shift that changes everything. You stop texting to get a response. You start texting to express alignment. That's when the dynamic reverses. You are no longer waiting to be chosen. You are inviting without attachment. You don't wonder if someone will reply. You continue your life, and paradoxically, that's when replies come more naturally. Not because of tricks, but because of posture. Silence is not absence. It is confidence without explanation. When you stop over-texting, you stop overthinking. You stop negotiating your value. You stop pleading attention, and people feel that. Stoicism is not about detachment from others. It is about attachment to yourself. Text less, mean more. When you begin to text from this place, from calm instead of craving, something subtle but powerful starts to happen. You no longer feel the urge to fix the conversation. You don't rush to clarify. You don't rush to soften your words. You don't rush to send a follow-up just to feel okay again. And that alone separates you from most people. Because most people text as if they're standing on unstable ground. They're constantly adjusting, correcting, apologizing for their presence. Stoicism teaches a different posture. Stand firm first, speak second. This doesn't mean becoming distant or cold. It means you stop using words as emotional crutches. And once you stop doing that, your messages start to carry a different weight. They feel slower, more deliberate, more grounded. And people notice, not because you announced a change, but because your energy stopped leaking through the screen. Now let's talk about a common misunderstanding. Many people here text less and assume it means being unavailable on purpose. That's not Stoicism. That's strategy driven by insecurity. Real Stoic restraint doesn't come from wanting control over others. It comes from control over yourself. You don't delay replies to create desire. You reply when you're present. You don't withhold words to seem mysterious. You speak when there's meaning. There is no calculation here. There is only alignment. And alignment is felt immediately. When your actions match your internal state, there is no friction. This is why Stoic communication feels natural, not forced. You're not trying to manage impressions. You're not shaping yourself to be consumed. You're simply showing up without needing anything back. And paradoxically, that's when people lean forward, because human attention is drawn to what doesn't beg for it. Let's take this deeper. One of the biggest reasons people overtext is because they mistake silence for rejection. Silence feels like danger. The mind rushes in and says, "Do something, say something, fix this." But Stoicism invites you to pause and question that impulse. Is silence actually a threat? Or is it simply space? Most of the time, it's just space, and space is not empty. Space is potential. When you rush to fill it, you remove that potential. You turn an open moment into a closed statement. Stoic communication respects silence because it understands this. Not every pause requires action. Not every gap requires explanation. Sometimes the strongest move is to remain still. This is especially true in modern communication. We live in a world where everyone is constantly available, constantly reacting, constantly broadcasting their inner state. In that environment, restraint becomes magnetic. Not loud restraint, quiet restraint, the kind that doesn't announce itself. Now let's address anticipation again, but from a deeper Stoic lens. Anticipation is not about teasing, it's about trajectory. People stay engaged with what feels like it's going somewhere. Not fast, not rushed, but forward. Most conversations die because they loop. They circle the same safe topics. They repeat familiar patterns. Stoic communication introduces movement without force. You don't push the conversation, you guide it. And guidance doesn't need many words. A simple shift in phrasing is often enough. Instead of explaining what you're thinking, you invite perspective. Instead of delivering information, you open a door instead of presenting yourself. You allow discovery. This is why anticipation works. Not because you're hiding something, but because the interaction feels alive. Alive things move. Dead things repeat. The Stoics believed life was defined by flow, not by rigid control, and communication is no different. Now let's talk about emotional investment. Here's a truth most people resist. The person who invests first often feels weaker, not because investment is wrong, but because premature investment creates imbalance. Stoic communication avoids imbalance. It doesn't rush intimacy. It doesn't demand reciprocity. It allows connection to grow at its natural pace. This is why Stoic compliments feel different. They don't flood the moment. They don't overwhelm. They arrive quietly and land deeply when you acknowledge someone's character. Instead of their appearance, you shift the emotional axis. You're no longer competing with attention. You're offering recognition. And recognition creates respect. Respect creates safety. Safety creates attraction. This sequence matters. Most people try to jump to attraction without building the foundation underneath. Stoicism refuses to skip steps. It understands that what lasts is built slowly. Now consider this. When you stop texting from anxiety, you stop interpreting every interaction as a verdict on your worth. A delayed reply no longer means rejection. A short message no longer triggers panic, because your center is no longer located in someone else's response. This is where real freedom begins. Not freedom from people, but freedom from dependence. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. Texting is an outside event. Your reaction to it is the real work. Once you understand this, communication becomes lighter, playful, even. Not because you're trying to be entertaining, but because you're not carrying emotional weight into every exchange. And people feel that lightness. They feel that you're not asking them to regulate your emotions, that you're not placing responsibility on them to make you feel okay. This is rare, and rarity creates value. Let's bring this back to the core idea. Texting is not about keeping someone interested. It's about remaining yourself in a medium designed to trigger insecurity. Stoic texting is not about control. It's about composure, not about winning attention, about not losing yourself. When you text less, you create room for meaning. When you mean more, your words carry weight, and weight is what people respond to. Not volume, not speed, not effort. Wait. This is the quiet power of Stoic communication, and in the next part, we'll go even deeper into how this mindset reshapes not just texting, but the way people respond to you. In every form of interaction as this way of communicating settles in, you begin to notice something unexpected. It's not just that people respond differently. You respond differently. You stop interpreting every message as a signal of where you stand. You stop reading between the lines, as if your worth is hidden there. And this is where Stoic communication reveals its real purpose. It was never about attraction. It was about sovereignty. Most people don't lose others through texting. They lose themselves. They abandon their inner stability. The moment a reply feels uncertain, Stoicism draws a clear line here. Never give another person the power to disturb your inner order. When you internalize this, texting stops being emotional gambling. It becomes expression, clean, grounded, unattached. This is why Stoic communication feels calm. Even when emotions are present, you're not suppressing feeling. You're not ruled by it. There's an important shift that happens at this stage. You no longer text to maintain connection. You text when connection already exists, and that difference is profound. Because connection that needs constant maintenance is already unstable, Stoics understood that anything requiring continuous reassurance was built on fear. True connection doesn't need to be chased. It deepens through presence, not pressure. Now let's address something uncomfortable. When you stop chasing, some people will drift away. Not because you did something wrong, but because the dynamic has changed. They were accustomed to being pursued, to being emotionally centered. When that stops, they feel the absence. Stoicism prepares you for this. Do not seek harmony at the cost of self-respect. If a connection only survives when you abandon your center, it was never balanced to begin with. And balance matters. Balanced energy invites respect. Unbalanced energy invites consumption. This is why Stoic communication is selective. Not everyone deserves full access to you. Not every conversation deserves depth. Not every silence needs to be broken. Disciplining communication is not about control over others. It's about boundaries for yourself. You begin to recognize when a message is coming from clarity and when it's coming from fear. And when fear speaks, you learn to wait. Waiting is not inaction. Waiting is restraint. Seneca wrote, "He is powerful who has power over himself." That power shows most clearly in moments when impulse demands release. When you feel the urge to send another message, just to feel calmer, when you want to explain yourself before anyone asked, when you want to secure reassurance before uncertainty has even fully formed. These are the moments that shape character, and character is always felt, even through text. As this discipline deepens, you also begin to speak more honestly, not more frequently, more truthfully. You stop padding your words to soften reactions. You stop performing versions of yourself designed to be liked. Stoic honesty is quiet. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't justify itself. It simply stands. And when you speak from that place, people sense integrity. Integrity creates trust. Trust creates safety. Safety allows intimacy. This is why Stoic communication, though restrained, often feels more intimate than constant contact. Because intimacy is not built by quantity, it's built by consistency of being. You are the same person, whether you're texting or silent. That coherence is rare. Now here is a deeper truth. When you no longer rely on texts to regulate your emotional state, you stop confusing attention with connection. Attention is loud. Connection is quiet. Attention demands reaction. Connection allows space. Stoicism always favors the quiet path, not because it avoids engagement, but because it understands where meaning lives. Meaning doesn't shout, it settles. And when meaning settles into your communication, your presence changes. People don't feel pulled, they feel oriented. They don't feel managed, they feel met. This is the shift most people can't explain, but always feel. You become someone others don't feel the need to test. Because you're not asking to be chosen. You're already standing in yourself. This is why saying less works. Not because silence is powerful by itself, but because silence, when chosen, reveals inner order. And inner order is deeply attractive. Let's bring everything together. Stoic texting is not a method, it's a mirror. It shows you where you are still reactive, where you are still seeking relief, where you are still negotiating your value. And as those patterns fall away, your communication naturally changes. You stop chasing clarity. You stop chasing validation. You stop chasing outcomes. You speak when there is truth. You pause when there is noise. And life responds differently to that posture. Not because you demanded respect, but because you embodied it. Marcus Aurelius once reminded himself, the tranquility that comes when you stop caring what they say, or think, or do. Only what you do. Texting is something you do. Do it from strength. Do it from self-command. Do it without surrendering your center. Text less, mean more, and watch how people begin to meet you at the level you've chosen to stand on. By this point, something should feel different, not just in how you think about texting, but in how your body reacts to it. The urge to reach for your phone is quieter now. The need to fill silence has softened, and that change matters more than any technique you could memorize. Because the goal was never to master texting. The goal was to master yourself. Stoicism does not promise that people will always respond. It does not guarantee attraction, attention, or approval. What it offers instead is something far more valuable: inner steadiness. When you stop texting to regulate emotion, you free others from the burden of managing your inner state. And when others feel that freedom, they feel safe around you. Safety is the foundation of every meaningful connection. Not excitement, not intensity, not constant contact. Safety, the kind that comes from being with someone who is not constantly seeking reassurance. This is why Stoic communication changes how people experience you. They don't feel pulled, they don't feel chased, they don't feel responsible, they feel choice, and choice is attractive. Now here is a final reminder, one that the Stoics would insist on. You do not control responses. You do not control timing. You do not control how others feel. What you do control is the posture you bring into every interaction. You control whether your words come from clarity or fear. You control whether you speak to express truth or to escape discomfort. And this is where freedom lives. Not in outcome, in posture. If someone responds warmly, you receive it without attachment. If they respond briefly, you remain unmoved. If they do not respond at all, you return to your life. This is not indifference. This is self-respect. Stoicism is often misunderstood as emotional distance. In truth, it is emotional ownership. You feel fully, but you do not hand your feelings to someone else to carry. And when you live this way, your communication becomes clean. No pressure, no hidden contracts, no silent expectations, just presence, and presence is rare. So the next time you feel the impulse to send one more message, to clarify something no one asked about, to soften yourself for acceptance, pause, ask yourself one question: am I speaking from strength or from need? That single question will guide you better than any texting rule ever could. Because when you choose strength, your words naturally slow down. They become deliberate. They land. Text less. Mean more, not to be noticed, not to be desired, but to remain whole. In a world that constantly invites you to fragment yourself for attention, if this perspective resonated with you, if you felt something settle rather than spike, then this channel is for you. Here, we don't chase connection, we build inner order first, and let everything else align around it. Subscribe to Stoic Havenway and walk this path with us, quietly, steadily, with self-command.